All right, boys and girls, the word for the day is night. So I want to pick at a nit, to be sure, and regarding how pilots use the word night, specifically night currency. For example, if I said, I'm not night current, or I need to go get in my night landings, we're talking about the reg that says if you're going to act as pilot in command, carrying passengers, in the preceding 90 days, you have to do your 3 takeoffs and landings, yada, yada, yada. At daytime, those can be touch and goes, stop and goes, full stops, taxi backs. Tailwheel airplanes have to be some full stop version of that. And then it goes on further to say at night, they all have to be some form of full stops. You can't do touch and goes. Problem is that reg does not use the word night anywhere in there. And that's the nit that I want to pick at. Seems kind of silly, but it's going to be important how you log it in your logbook. So to start with, let's actually see how the FAA defines night, and we can go from there. So in our regulations, Chapter 1 has a ton of definitions for us. And we can see night defined here means the time between the end of evening civil twilight and the beginning of morning civil twilight, as published in the Air Almanac, converted to local time. So, what does that tell us? I still don't have a time frame in there. We just get a new term, civil twilight. That's not defined in the regs anywhere, but it actually said we can go look it up in the Air Almanac. All right, so everybody get out your copy of the Air Almanac. Yeah, I don't have one either. But we do have Google. So I don't have a title card for this, but if you go Google civil twilight, you will see that it defines it as when the sun has passed 6 degrees below the horizon. Well, that still doesn't help me. I don't know when the sun is 6 degrees below the horizon. I can't see it. It's below the horizon. So there's probably a half a frazillion different websites out there where you can key in your location and the date, and it will tell you when is sunset, when is the end of civil twilight, when is the beginning of morning civil twilight, when is sunrise, and you can get your times based upon that. So generally, civil twilight ends about 30 minutes after sunset. Might be a few minutes more, might be a few minutes less. If you look up on those websites, they'll tell you exactly when it is. But for the purpose of the examples I'm going to do, we're just going to use 30 minutes after sunset because it makes for really easy math. So let's have a flight here. We are going to take off at, let's say we're going to take off at 5:30, and we're going to fly until 7:30. Okay, we got a 2-hour flight. And let's say that sunset is 6 o'clock. Sun set. I should have been a doctor. Okay? So if we use our 30-minute approximation, civil twilight is half hour after that. 6:30. End of civil twilight. Okay? So the reg said that night is at the end of civil twilight. So pretty much anything on from here is night. Sorry if that's hard to read. So we take off and we fly. 6 o'clock hits, there's sunset. There's actually another reg that kicks in there. We'll look at that in just a second. So then we keep flying and we hit the end of civil twilight. We've flown for about an hour and now we've got night. And we continue flying until we land at 7:30. Okay? So what does that mean to me as a pilot, the whole day versus night? Some logbooks have a day and a night column. Some will only have a night column. So you would put 2 hours total, 1 hour of night. You could infer that the other hour was daytime. For planning or for making a flight like this, other regs that kick in with dealing with night, now that we know when night is VFR fuel minimums. Or for flight planning. We need to plan on 30 minutes of reserve fuel if you're flying in the day, or 45 minutes at night. So we know we need 45 minutes of reserve fuel here. What other regs do we have that deal with night? Actually, we've got one right here at sunset. So let's take a look at that one real quick and we'll add it to our example. So 91-209 says, no person may, during the period from sunset to sunrise, or in Alaska, and it drones on about Alaska for a little bit. I'm going to skip over that. Sorry if you live in Alaska. During the period from sunset to sunrise, you must operate an aircraft. No person may operate an aircraft unless it has lighted position lights. Those are your red, kind of your bluish green lights on the wingtips and the white position light on the back. So that's not night. That's actually before the FAA's definition of night. So we take off here at 5:30. We fly for half an hour. Here we need to turn on our nav lights. Did I spell that right? Nav lights. We fly for another half hour, and then we start logging night. And we complete our flight. Great. Now we're going to put that in our logbook. So I've got a takeoff and a landing, right? Most logbooks, if you look at the column or columns where you can log your landings, they do it in different ways. Some of them just have a column for takeoff and a column for landing. Great. 1 and 1. Some of them will actually kind of split it where they only have a landing column and they have it as day and night. So you have to be really careful about how you log your takeoffs and landings to get back to the currency portion of the reg, which is the last reg that we're going to look at. 61.57 says, for night takeoff and landing experience, except as provided in paragraph E of the section, no person may act as pilot in command of an aircraft carrying passengers during the period beginning 1 hour after sunset and ending 1 hour before sunrise, unless within the preceding 90 days that person has made 3 takeoffs and 3 landings. Notice they even drive it there to really specify takeoffs and landings, to a full stop during the period beginning 1 hour after sunset and ending 1 hour before sunrise. And the person was the sole manipulator, same category and class of airplane. So if you're going to carry passengers when it's really good and dark, they want to make sure that you have had some recent takeoff and landing experience when it's really good and dark. All right, so an hour after sunset will be right about here. 7 o'clock. So we take off, we fly. Half hour later, we got to turn on our nav lights. We fly for another half hour. Now we can start logging night. We fly for another half hour. And now if I'm carrying passengers from here on, we'll write packs for passengers, I better have in the last 90 days performed 3 takeoffs and 3 landings somewhere in this time frame, or on later, somewhere past an hour after sunset. So let's say a week ago I made this flight, okay, with no passengers. I took off here and landed here. I've definitely got a night landing, okay? That's well past the end of civil twilight. And it's even a half hour after the reg for carrying passengers, so it's really good and dark. So I definitely have a night landing, but I don't have a night takeoff. And then the next day I do another one of these flights, and the next day I do another one of these flights. So I have 3 night landings and 3 day takeoffs. I'm not current for carrying passengers. And that's what gets a lot of people. They take off during the day, they land at night, their logbook only has a column for night, so they put their night landing in there. And then if something happens, heaven forbid, that you're trying to explain yourself to the FAA and you're trying to prove that you are current to carry passengers, you might not be as current as you think you are. So your takeoff has to be past this line as well as your landing. So however you log it in your logbook, you can make notes, circle it if it's a night landing, make whatever notation you need to. So if you have to go back to the FAA and prove it, you definitely can. A nit to pick at, but it's an important one. One other last thought I want to give is during your training to become a private pilot, you do have to make 10 you have 3 hours of night training. Some of that is 3 takeoffs and landings. That can all be done from right here. So that definitely has nothing to do with the carrying of passengers. It's just a part of that definition of night. So if the day before your check ride, you go out and you do a little half-hour flight right here with your instructor, and you hammer out the last 3 of your takeoffs and landings you needed to be qualified to go take your check ride, that's great. But you're definitely still not current to carry passengers, because those were all done before an hour after sunset. So a silly distinction, but it'll definitely keep you out of trouble with the FAA. So if you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, let me know, and thanks for watching.